Hi guys, this is just a quick tutorial on the stylized sketch shader. Quite a lot of comments looking this to be on a marketplace, so I finally took everything together. I've kind of rewritten this shader as well for Unreal Engine 5 and made it a lot more user friendly. Yeah, so it just shows, I'm just showing you the ArtStation page that I posted a few years ago. With It's based on this shader, this sketch by Ian McHugh. I really just wanted to create something that would create these kind of lines that go off the surface of the model. You can see here it's kind of hard, but then it kind of created many other effects using different processes that I found on the way. So yeah, there's quite a lot of videos on here explaining exactly what each aspect of the shader can do, but I've completely rewritten it from here. It's kind of the old version of this sort of the depth fade. Similar to the sketch in the distance, we have some sketches of buildings in the distance to give like a stylized depth of field effect. But yeah, there's quite a lot of videos on my ArtStation to showcase the shader. This is kind of like a chalk look. But if we want to jump into the shader, we can look at some of these images as well. This is kind of what the depth fade looks like now. It's kind of rewritten everything to have a lot more customization and different looks, like you can get Toon Shader now with it. The lines can be projected in 3D or in 2D space. Just some of the color variation stuff as well. But you can get like a lot of different looks. We have an example scene here as well with the 9 different example materials. This is the overview scene. I'll go through some custom stencil stuff for characters or certain props that you want to isolate and have different effects compared to the background. I'll go through that in a second. Yeah, here it shows us characters using custom stencil. This is the chalk look now is completely different as well. That's the shaders kind of been organized out into material functions as well, so it can be a bit more modular and used in like other projects. I'll go through the example scene now. But yeah, I'd recommend you use temporal anti-aliasing on the project. Some of the material features just works better with that. You might get some ghosting on some of the lines if you're moving the camera back and forth like that. So yeah, you can get those settings in edit project settings and you just type in AA or anti-alias and you'll get that. I can open up the master machine shader as well. Yeah, we've got like some debug settings as well for certain. These are the debug settings. We've got some debug settings just for certain things that's easier to see because it's obviously quite complicated at times. But I've kind of broken the main ones down to these material functions. There's 8 different material functions that you can kind of bring out into your own master materials if you just want a certain feature from it. So it's a wee bit more modular that way. I've also tried to color code everything. The outlines being green, inner lines yellow, and red is for the off-surface lines. Orange for the background, blue here is for like shadows and highlights for the crosshatch, and then this box over here is like all the background features because it also has like textures for the backgrounds, the shadows, the highlights, and then lastly there's like a vignette setting now that I've added recently, but we can jump out of that and go into the first category of the tutorial. This is just the custom stencils, so it shows like there's 9 custom stencils at the moment. They just isolate certain features from the post-process or remove them. It's good for characters or props that you just want to have a different look versus the actual post-process and master. So if you click on this asset, for example, and type in custom, you'll see at the bottom here there's a render custom depth pass. By default it would be off, but we can turn this on. Let me just hit G to not hide. Yeah, just hit G just to get the orange outline away. So yeah, we can cycle through. If we just type 1, for example, you'll see this asset here, for example, will change. So 0 is all the post-processing effects. this asset, for example, whereas 1, 2, we can cycle through to get completely different looks for this asset. So we have 9, and this kind of details all of the different what it's doing with the post process each time. But yeah, you can go through this yourself. I should probably show how to set up, just in case some people aren't familiar with post-processing materials. If you add, if you go to place actors, you can type in post-process volume. You can scale it quite big, and then if you scroll down, you'll find, let's just type it in, material. If you want to add post-process materials, you can just add an asset and then go to choose add asset reference. And then in your content browser, you can drag and drop. I've got some examples here. Material instance or a master material. If you want to drag and drop that in, nothing will happen because we're not inside the post process yet. But if you fly into the post process, you'll see that the effect comes up. Now, if you want the post process to be global, if you type in extent, you can see infinite extent bounds. So that means if we fly outside of the post process, it will always be visible. You can uncheck that as well. But yeah, I'll just remove this for now. But that's kind of how you set up the post processing volume. Yeah, that was the first one was custom stencils, and the second one is the depth. So like each of the aspects of the shader can be culled at different distances. If I just find here is the material instance for this version. You can see I've kind of labeled and categorized all of the different aspects. Some of them has booleans that can be turned off and on just to keep it a little bit more cleaner. In general, there is like high quality, so bool effect, and offline high quality. So that kind of just renders a lot more scene textures for like a higher quality lines. Sometimes when we're using the offline surface textures, like you need to render it quite a lot. So it's just like an option if you're getting a bit of noise on your textures, as an option to turn those on or off. The animation boiling at the top here is yeah, it's just an option to have animated textures. You can see here. So kind of this is just the speed of it boiling, essentially like a old school 2D frame by frame animation. But that it flies to all of the lines. We just don't have any distortion on the green lines here or the yellow lines, but it applies to like everything. And you can have animation in the background as well, but we can look at that later. Let me just reset this. Yeah, but for the background stuff, you can see, let's see, we can, if we go to, for example, like in this scene, there's a number at the top that refers to, in the material instance, the category number. So if we go to this one, there's animation, which is the top one. But if we go to distance fades, we can, if the outline here is green, for example, we can change the distance the outline for the green dissolves. You can see it disappearing there, or we can increase the distance of where it comes in. To help with this, sometimes it's quite hard to see. I've got a debug feature as well. If you turn that on, it'll show the plane and it hides all of the other parameters here. So that's just an option to debug where that plane is, and it's colored as well, green for outline. If we yeah, so we can, if we go back to the distance fade, we can turn on, there's blue for the crosshatch. Yeah, just different, and then the white in the background is just the background. We can change the background colors if we want. Yeah, so it's just the background distance fade that can also be changed. How far back we want that to just encroach on the rest of the scene. We can bring it right up so the background is just taking over everything. So essentially, it would just be like a white screen, and we can change the textures there to make it look like say paper or something. But let's just turn that back, bring this forward a bit to show. And we can change the contrast, obviously. You can actually invert the contrast if you wanted to come the other way. Okay, go on to the next. Yeah, this is just the animation boiling. There's also like a material on the object as well that I've applied to give a bit of a wobble. So this is like plus an object material. Yeah, you can just see different textures boiling. Also the outliners, the outline. If we just grab the material here from this post process, the outline is also boiling as well, but because it's not being distorted. If I type in material again, we can increase the thickness of these outlines. Go to the bottom and increase the distortion a little bit. You can kind of see the sort of distorted lines as well. It's being distorted, the outlines, to make it look like it's hand drawn every single frame. Yeah, so we can go on to, yeah, here's just an example of, I've color coded everything as well to show what each line does. The crosshatch, for example, is on the shadows. There's also an option, if you go up to the crosshatch, which is number 4 there, you can see, there's also options for a separate texture for the highlights, which would be here as well. So if we go to number 4, which is the lines, we can actually input this as well. You'll see now a texture come up on these highlights as well. If we jump to that, we can grab in different textures depending on what you want. Right now it's set to black. Put it to blue. But yeah, depending on the type of texture you want, and we can also just turn down the cross hatch highlight amount. Depending on what way we want, but we'll just turn it off for now. Yeah, then the off surface lines is the lines that come off the surface of the model. You can see at the top here. They're not within the silhouette of the asset, and then the inner lines are those lines within the assets, and then the green lines are those that just outline the asset. That color variation is just like a way of essentially just putting a hue shift on the linear textures. I've also cranked it. I've also obviously cranked it up to 11 here, so it's quite high contrast. But if I jump back to the material example for this one, if I go to the smudge effect, for example, I'll just turn off the background for now. If we go to the background amount, I'll just turn this down to 0.1. This is the color variation here. If I just turn it off completely, it's just one color. But I'll turn that up. I'll just turn this down to 0.1, so the texture is hardly seen here. I'll just turn it off for now just to show the smudging, which is 7. If we jump up to 7 and turn on smudge, and then we can turn up the scale. The scale is just like the size of the texture. So if we actually make it distance as well as how far away from the asset the smudge goes, so like how smudged that would be, and then we can increase the scale of this texture. Let's put a different texture in that's a bit higher contrast, and then reduce the contrast here. You can distort it a little bit, and then just increase the intensity of that. So it kind of gives the effect of like a smudge off the side. So you can obviously match this to the say the offline the surface lines as well. Maybe I went a little bit far with the how far that distances went. But yeah, that's the smudging. I'll just leave that on like that. Kind of a smudge effect on the assets around. It kind of works well for the chalk or like a pen example. Yeah, so each texture as well has the option to be world projected. For example, this one is screen space, which kind of gives the look of a 2D. It like helps with a 2D look because it's kind of mapped to the screen as if someone's just drew on the screen. And then we have the projected cross hatches as well. That kind of is better in 3D. Sorry, I went into the other post process there. Works better for 3D assets, but sometimes you kind of want to have that kind of 2D look about your assets. And then the background colors can be changed independently, so you can change the color of the shadows, the color of the highlights, and then the background independently. And you can also fade those back into the scene color. With the vignette, it's kind of like a 3D vignette. You can see on the floor, it's kind of like the textures kind of projected on the ground. If we move, we can kind of see the textures projected on the ground. Kind of, even on the blue here, you can see as it comes up, it's kind of like attached to the ground, kind of just like a different way. I kind of made it slightly transparent here just so you can see around, but that's and then the unlit mode as well. There's like in number 15 here, you can go down. There's just settings to go unlit that kind of gives like a bit of a toon shader effect with the shadows. And you can kind of fade in and out from like you don't have to go completely toon, you can fade in and out. And then lastly is like the distortion. You can kind of see the lines here are distorted on the edge of this, kind of to make it look like someone's drew. And then the masking as well kind of removes part of the lines as if the line's broken and comes off. So that kind of helps make it look a lot more hand-drawn. You can see here at the top kind of a little bit of distortion with the asset there. It's also screen space as well. We can jump into some of the examples, the example scene, which is kind of a lot more useful to see exactly what the shader's doing. We can just cycle through some of the different looks. You can see here that we've got the boiling effect, kind of like a hand-drawn textured look. And you can see the character down here is using a custom stencil. But yeah, just a bit of a scene to fly around and see. This one we're using the vignette as well to make it look like only things in the center of the screen is drawn, whereas here is like everything is drawn. It's more of a pen look, this one. Yeah, this one's using screen space crosshatch to make it look a little bit more 2D. Yeah, it's just different. It's more of a painterly look for this one, but more of a dramatic vignette. You can see kind of the scribbles. It's more similar to AMQ sketch, I guess. This one's kind of a funky one that I just created using the color variation. But yeah, just another one that's quite dramatic. This character down here is kind of nicely highlighted. Just looking at different artists and things, but yeah, just an idea of the different looks you can get. Here's like a toon shader with a 2D projected paper texture. All these textures are in the project as well, so you can kind of use these to customize, or you can obviously import your own textures, but these are just to get you going. This is kind of the chalk look one, kind of like a blackboard. Yeah, I really like this one. Sort of the animated. I also made this scene as well, just a small bonus scene, I guess, like just to test out other things. Yeah, just looking at trees and clouds, and it also kind of has the 2D paper look to it, like the animated ground as well. But yeah, the distance feed here shows as well. As we go away from this would be distance. And then lastly, we've got the this character scene. It's just L anime. It just kind of shows the stencils in situ with a character and how they could be used. Like, for example, this guy has all post processing enabled, which will be exactly the same as the scene. This guy has no crosshatch. This guy's got no inner lines, but he's got an outline. This guy's got no outline. Yeah, and these guys have like the backgrounds removed, so you can actually see this. If you had textures for the character, you can see the character's textures. And then these guys have like no outlines, but they have the crosshatch enabled. Yeah, just like all the different looks you can get from the character. I could hit play here to show the animation, but I think it kind of, because I'm hitting play, I'm recording at the same time, and the resolution kind of goes down. But yeah, it's just different view from the animated character. Yeah, and how that might be used for, say, an animation or a video game, or how you could change some of these assets. For example, type in custom again, enable the depth pass, so we can do 5, for example. I don't know what that'd be useful for, but obviously you can do it for different models and things. I don't know why you do it to a building, but the option's there, I guess. But yeah, it just gives you that extra flexibility for each asset in the scene. But yeah, that's it for this tutorial. Thanks guys. There's more videos on ArtStation as well to go through all of the different functionalities. But yeah, thanks guys.